everybody. Welcome to the second show of the day. This is Get the Word Out. And we are going to meet an amazing, fascinating person, George Hornedo, who is in Indy, and he is going to primary Andre Carson, our person in Congress that is a Democrat. And I think primaries are amazing. I think competition is healthy and fantastic and very needed. Also, we need to drive up Democratic turnout in Indiana. A lot of us have lost hope and don't even go to vote. Here is a reason to vote. Let's meet George, find out why he is fascinating, why he cares about us, why it is about the people, and let's have a great time on Get the Word Out. So, George, come on.
How's it going, Sarah? Appreciate you having me, and appreciate everybody that's tuning in, and excited to chat, and hopefully you get to know a little bit more about me. And I'd love to hear from all of you that tune in and engage with you and hear about the issues that you are most animated by and what you'd like to see out of your representation.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this show. Project Next, we're pretty new, we're growing, but we're only a few months old. And I actually started Project Next Media with my co-founder, Dr. Tim Peck, who ran for Congress, and that's how I met him. And I have to say, I really like these people that run for Congress. It's a hard thing to do. It's such a, Tim has a large landmass area. Yours is smaller, but more people concentrated, so it's different. But I'm really fascinated by people that want to do this because it is hard. So I know very little about you. I saw you online. I'm sort of engaged with who are the top people in Indiana trying to save Indiana, and that's how you popped up. I didn't even know what you were running for or what you were doing. And I just really immediately resonated with your message of to the people, supporting the people. And then I was like, I wonder if he'll come on the show. And you were like, yeah. So George,
No, incredibly
stuff
excited
about you. Yeah.
No, incredibly excited to be here. And this is my first interview on launch day. So I'm excited that it's with you and would get the word out. So I believe that campaigns are not about candidates, that they're not about parties. And quite often they're not actually about specific policies so much as it is about people at the end of the day and how they perceive each of those things. So certainly happy to kind of give some background on me as a person.
Oh no, I can't hear you. Let's see if it comes on.
My profession through a resume and have it be that, and that's not the sort of campaign that I want to run either. But to give some texture, so George Hornedo, I joke that I'm a Hoosier by way of Texas. So I originally grew up in South Texas. My parents were high school sweethearts. They were married young, had me young while in college. And, I was born in San Antonio, but grew up in Laredo, Texas, which is a 96+% Mexican-American border town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So my parents saw that I was excelling early on in school, but wanted me to have more opportunities than what was available to them. So kind of going against, Mexican-American culture where it's, a very tight family unit, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, etc. We picked up and moved a couple hours away to San Antonio, Texas. And it was there that my parents sacrificed a lot, so I could get a better education. And that education kind of changed my whole trajectory. And in middle of 8th grade, my dad's job promotion brought us to Indianapolis. And so Indy's been home ever since, and, was fortunate enough again with the sacrifice of my parents to, get a wonderful education.
And how old were you when you moved to Indy?
8th grade.
8th grade. Wow.
Yep.
Are your parents still with us? Are you still have your parents?
My parents are still with us, and they're wonderful, and
they're in
I stand on. They're in Indy, they're in Texas, they're in Chicago. So now that they're empty nesters with my younger brother, being a couple of years out of college as well, they're enjoying this phase of their life.
I just want to just shout out to your parents. They sound like just incredible people that sacrificed a lot to make their children's lives better. I think a lot of us can resonate that. I will do anything for my children. That's one of the reasons I started Project Next, to try to save public education. So yeah, I just shout out to your parents. Like, they clearly did a fantastic job. And also, I'm going to guess you had some struggle growing up. There was some.
I stand on their shoulders, certainly. You know, none of what I've accomplished in my life would be possible if it weren't for the sacrifice that they made, that the vision that they had. And so I remember that every single day. And it's really kind of driven my interest in policy, and then politics as well. So, to me, the single biggest and most shameful policy failure in our country is poverty. And that is not unique to Indianapolis, but the fact that 1 in 4 kids in Indy lives in poverty is unacceptable, and it's shocking.
I
And
did
that's
not know
based
that.
on,
One in
yeah,
four kids in Indianapolis are being raised in poverty.
1 in 4, based off metrics developed 60 years ago, when food was 1/3 of a household's expenses, and now it's 1/8. And so those metrics haven't been updated. But United Way of Central Indiana actually has their own metric system called ALICE, which is, I believe, asset living, income compensated, and I forget what the E is. But that updated metric shows that somewhere about 70+% of households in Marion County are either ALICE or poverty households.
Wow.
And so to me, in thinking, not that I grew up in poverty, but knowing that living paycheck to paycheck like families all across the country, right? And in our politics, we don't really talk about poverty. We talk about the middle class, getting people into the middle class, keeping people from falling out of the middle class, but we're afraid to say the P word. And I think the thing is, we talk about the middle class so much because the middle class is struggling, because it doesn't mean what it used to mean, as a result of these metrics not being updated. And so that is something that grounds, how I view policy and politics, because I've been very fortunate enough to chase my own American dream. So in short, not to get too deep into it, but I went to Cornell for undergrad, studied government. I immediately afterwards got my master's in education policy and management at Harvard.
Wow.
Throughout all those years, I joked that I was a perennial Obama world intern, or Democratic kind of policy world. So I worked on the poverty policy team for a think tank. I did education policy, at a different organization. I was in the Obama White House as an intern, re-elect headquarters in 2012 in Chicago, the presidential inaugural committee in 2013, the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics, the DNC, an early childhood, development initiative, run out of Next Gen America, Tom Steyer's organization, and the office of Hillary Clinton within the Clinton Foundation. And when I was wrapping up, my time in grad school, I was fortunate enough to then land a political appointment at the U.S. Department of Justice.
Wow.
During the administration. So I went in doing press specifically for the Civil Rights Division mere weeks before Ferguson, before Eric Garner, et cetera. So it was a sobering time to have that sort of portfolio. And that's when it was Attorney General Holder. But a period that, I very much cherish. I learned a lot then, worked on issues that, have become passion points for me, and that I've continued to work on since. When Attorney General Lynch came on board, I ended up getting promoted, and so touched everything, whether it's civil rights to civil, criminal to antitrust, national security, environmental, and everything in between. Knowing that I was going to start law school at George Washington University, I surprisingly then got an opportunity to join Clinton campaign headquarters in 2016, but it was on the delegate operation. So it allowed me to go in, add value, help out how I can, and then come back and start law school. So wow. I did that in 2016. And then with every intention to do it 110%, a few weeks into law school, I got pulled into the Clinton Kane pre-elect transition team. So for those that don't know, the first year of law school is kind of the most important as it comes to grades and your potential career opportunities once you finish. And so I'm here working 60+ hour weeks on the transition team, while not really doing as much as I should during 1L fall. And so, thinking I was going to put law school on hold, go into the administration, and then of course we lose. Kind of reeling from that and wanting to find some way to add value. I then helped run a successful DNC vice chair race, and then ended up working for Jason Kander's voting rights organization, Let America Vote.
Are you serious? I love Jason Kander. I listen to his podcast.
Jason Kander.
I'm hoping to have him on the show. Maybe you can help me.
Jason Kander is incredible. He is a national treasure. I'm proud to have his support in my campaign. And
Yeah, he's one of my like role models and get involved politically. Yeah.
Jason always had this message about, we all have a platform. You don't need to be an elected official. You don't need, to be a candidate for office. Wherever you find community, whether it's work, whether it's in, your faith, whether it's an intramural club, whatever it might be, use the platform that we have and engage, build community, get involved. And I think that is more pertinent now than ever, because I completely understand, not to get too off track, but people's disillusionment right now in our politics. But
Yeah.
this is not the time to step away. It's the time to step up.
Right.
But so certainly that's something that I learned from Jason that I still hold dear to this day. And when I was wrapping up my law degree, I was talking to a couple different presidential campaigns, but having known Mayor Pete since 2012 and always admiring kind of his voice in the ecosystem. Once the Q1 fundraising numbers came out and showed he was a candidate that wasn't going to drop out in a month or anything, I said, you know what, this wouldn't be a terrible professional or financial decision to try and join. So I texted him, saying, hey, I graduate soon, put me to work. And I thought he might be a little too Hollywood at that point, but he was just neat and very humble, and heard from him immediately. And next thing I know, was connected to the team, interviewed, and flew out the day after law school graduation and started as his national delegate director, and then added to my portfolio with state legislators on top of everything else. And that was
and
an
Pete
incredible.
Buttigieg was our transportation secretary for 4
He
years.
was.
Pretty
I
amazing.
mean,
He was Mayor Pete
yep.
in South Bend.
He served us honorably here in Indy. He
That's
served us
amazing.
here
I
in
didn't know
Indiana.
any of that. I saw a picture of you with Pete Buttigieg, but I didn't know why. I didn't know if you just met him for a second, but no, you really know him and helped. That's incredible.
Yeah, so Pete's a strong voice in the ecosystem, and it'll be interesting to see kind of what those next steps look like. But once that race ended, I finally got a chance to study and take the bar exam. Then I ended up working for the Obama Foundation. I led their mayoral outreach and engagement on a reimagining policing pledge in the wake of George Floyd's death. So was able to get over 300 communities across the country to sign onto a pledge reviewing their use of force policies and looking at ways to combat systemic racism within law enforcement.
Wow.
And then did Biden general election in 2020, the coordinated campaign, voter protection. And then, was moving back to DC, looking at in conversations to join the administration. But then, an unexpected opportunity came up to join the DC office of a law firm headquartered here in Indianapolis. And it felt like the right opportunity to get a different texture, get some new experience. And, I'm young, I can always go back into government and politics. And, so really enjoyed, the work that I did working with the African American Mayors Association, cities of Jackson, Birmingham, Little Rock, some national nonprofits, and, felt very proud about the work that I did, and saw the ability to do it myself under my own banner, but also, quite frankly, just missed, passions like political work that's a little bit harder to do from the perch of a law firm. And randomly enough, I had also got my MBA agent certification, and so I've been planning to do some work in that space until the political and the government affairs work kind of took off faster than expected. But that's a bit on the background side, and I touched in terms of kind of from a personal background why I'm interested in policy. But in terms of politics, I love politics because I'm deeply competitive, and to me, politics is sport with consequence. And as a 5'7"
I like
and a
that.
half,
Sports with consequence. I like that.
Right, as a 5'7" and a half, and I'll give myself that half. Hispanic man, my sport was never going to be basketball, as much as I love basketball. So politics became my sport. And look, I love the Pacers, I love the Colts, but whoever wins the Super Bowl or the NBA Finals, it doesn't affect my life 20 years down the road, but who we elect to public office does. And so I've always been, fascinated by politics and policy, and the ability for government to unlock people's potential and be a force for good. And so, there are two teams at the end of the day, at least at this kind of stage in our political environment. And my team's the blue team, and the values that we share. And people don't always have to agree, and that's fine. but how do we collectively work together to build a larger coalition? Because politics is a game of addition and not subtraction. And how do we have people see themselves in our party? How do we have people see themselves in our policies, in our politics, and feel the desire to engage? So I'll pause there, and there are threads from there that I'd love
Oh,
to
there's
speak
so much.
on.
So if I had the question, why are you qualified to run for Congress? I think you very well said why. I would love to do more deep dives sometime when you come on future Project Next shows about your time with Obama or your time with Jason Kander or your time with Pete Buttigieg, because I imagine you learned skills that
Mhm.
will that help you when you talk to all different people and when you
Mhm.
get in this extremely difficult game of politics to try to make our lives better. What something I'm so upset about, I am
Mhm.
all about unity. Project Next was
Mhm.
founded. We want to make people's lives better. We want to unite and not divide. And we're very disgusted by media, news sources, social
Mhm.
media, by people profiting off of our fears.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
fear is the easiest way to control people. And I see it working on the right and on the left. And I see it messing up people's lives and
Yeah.
creating division with neighbors. Like we're scared to
Yeah.
talk to our neighbors because maybe they voted differently. And
Yeah.
I live in Harrison County, which is rural. About seven
Mhm.
out of 10 voters vote Republican here.
Yeah.
And most of the people here are fantastic people that I love and that are
Absolutely.
just doing the best to support their families. But I talk
Yeah.
to other Democrats, and when I tell them that, they look at me like I'm ridiculous because they're believing the fear that's spread online and through our media and our
Mhm.
news. And I get frustrated
Mhm.
because I'm trying to create unity here. And I'm
Yep.
going to be having Republicans on my show. I already have one. Brian
Mhm.
Zimmerman is a Republican. He's a special forces veteran. He's a fantastic human being. I care about him
Yep.
deeply, and I'm learning stuff from him. And I'm going to have more. And I'm
Mhm.
having Democrats angry and saying things to me
Mm.
like, how dare you? You're talking to the enemy. Do you have a response some people on the left that feel this way?
Yeah, I mean, for one, like I said, politics is about coalition building. How do you build the biggest coalition? Part of that is being intentional with language and how we try and draw more people in. But part of it is also what is our approach to folks. So, like as an example, this is a touch the stove moment for a lot of Trump voters that are now being detrimentally affected by the policies. But are we as individuals, are we as a party going to say "I told you so," or are we going to welcome them into our tent? Right.
Yes.
So there's that. I also think, look, at the end of the day, these are our neighbors, right? Like these are people that we see every day, and can get along with in a variety of aspects. That does not mean that we don't call them out when they're wrong. That does not mean that we accept hatred and malice and bad intent and things like that. But when I think about things, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, an independent. You don't care. There are a couple of aspects about us that I think are shared. I think one, we all want to feel safe and secure. I think we also want to feel seen and heard, and I think that we want to feel a sense of belonging. And we can't ignore that too many people do not feel safe and secure, whether that be physically safe, financially secure, and that's regardless of party, right? I think too many people don't feel seen and heard in our politics, especially as our politics get more extreme, and there are a lot of people in the middle that don't see themselves in it. And then I think we have a crisis of belonging in this country, especially with there being less of that third place that people have and community that's outside of home and work. And so those are some, commonalities that I think are there. And again, this isn't about moderation. It's not at all about that. This isn't about left versus center, left versus right. This isn't about young versus old. There is a baseline aspect here as to values and like human needs that I think that we have to think about.
Yeah, I personally am tired of labels. I don't
Mm-hmm.
walk around saying, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. It's like, no, I'm Sarah Blessing. and I care about people, and I care about Palmyra and Harrison County and the
Yeah.
state and the country. And I
Hmm.
care about human beings. And I don't care whether that human being voted for someone that I don't like. I don't
Hmm.
care. I'm going to care about them. And we've
Yeah.
really lost that because of the
Hmm.
fear, the profiting off of the division. And I
Yeah.
think we're all going to have to talk about it more often
Hmm.
and make the case for it's okay if your neighbor hurt your feelings because they believe something differently than you. They're still a human
Hmm.
being, and they're a good person, and they're trying to do the
Yeah.
best for themselves and their family. And
Sure.
and we need to focus on that instead of focusing on the tiny bit of division we have.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day,
No.
we have most things in common. And you're right, we feel unheard at our
Hmm.
government. Statewide,
Absolutely.
I feel unheard. Our public
Absolutely.
education is being defunded. I'm very worried. I'm very upset about how
Yeah.
Indy is handling that problem. I feel like the
Yeah.
Democrats in Indianapolis, the mayor, could be doing a much better job standing up for public education,
People aren't
and
stepping up. It's
people are not
fascinating.
stepping up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you hit on an interesting point. So there are three reasons why I'm particularly animated in this run. Bucket one is about representation. We can come back to that later. Bucket two is about party building in Indiana. We can come back to that later. But bucket three kind of is can jump off what we were just discussing. So for me, bucket three is larger than district with respect to representation. It is larger than power building here in the state as a party, and it is this moment that we're in as a country and as a party at large, kind of in the wilderness trying to find its way. And so, there are some people that think that the fundamental split in the party is left versus center. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I don't
There are
either.
other that think that it's young versus old. I don't think that's the case either. I think there are aspects of both of those things that are true, but they are actually rooted in something deeper. Where I see the real divide in the party is between those, like Congressman Carson, that believe that our systems and institutions largely work for people and that we simply need to manage them in this decline and try and protect as much as we can, which is fair. And those like myself and many in my generation or outside of my generation that grew up in crisis and realized that we have to build what comes next. Because while Congressman Carson has implied I'm about tearing things down, I'm not about tearing anything down. And I'm not sure what show he's watching, but Elon Musk and Donald Trump are actively dismantling our government day in and day out. And so the fact of the matter is that whenever Democrats come back into power, we are not walking into a government that at all resembles that of which we knew. So chaos is a ladder and an opportunity. And so once we come back into power, that opportunity is to rebuild. But are we going to rebuild back to what we knew, which clearly was not doing enough to serve the needs of people? Or are we going to build something better? And so when I think about that and you look at this past election and people's response to it saying the party needs to move to the left or the party needs to move to the center, or you see some talking about abundance, more, I think all of those miss the mark and are not quite a governing philosophy or a real structure or framework by which to look at policy. So then I ask myself, if I don't know what the governing philosophy of the Democratic Party is, well, what's mine? So I call mine radical proportionality, which in a sentence is how do we align the scale of our solutions with the scale of our challenges? Because if a threat is existential, the solution cannot be incremental. So I believe in policy that doesn't flinch. I believe in policy that names the harm and responds in kind. And so while some may be here to manage the decline, I'm here to outbuild it.
Okay, let me
And
see
in
if I want to see if I'm getting this right. Okay,
yeah,
so I like what you're saying. You're
mhm,
saying Democrats are missing the mark and acting like everything's great. When Biden was president, just being like everything's great, just keep the same old going, and that didn't
mhm,
work. Donald Trump won the election.
mhm,
People are saying what's going on right now isn't working.
mhm.
What's
Yeah.
happening right now? A lot of dismantling of government systems. You're
Mhm,
saying when the Trump era ends and we get somebody back and we get
mhm,
different people in, we shouldn't go back to the systems that haven't been serving everybody. We should change the systems so that it benefits more people, especially benefits
mhm.
those in poverty and those struggling in the middle class. And maybe we
Yep.
don't just continuously help the
Hmm.
super uber billionaire, millionaire
Hmm.
people. Maybe we
Hmm.
help the people that don't have enough food to eat tonight. Is that what you're saying?
That touches on an aspect of it, certainly. So the way that I think about it is we we talk a lot in our political rhetoric right now about moderation, which to me feels like it's become a mask for inaction. And so when I think of proportionality, it's actually the real center and how do we move when crisis does. Because if your policies at the end of the day are not matching the harm, then you're not really governing, you're just guessing. And so I guess to give a concrete example, let's take affordable housing, which is a crisis here locally, but also across the country. When we talk about things like tax credits or building a couple thousand affordable housing units, yes, it is something, but it is a flea on an elephant versus what if we saw housing as infrastructure? Would that simple reframe allow us to address the issue in a way that is necessary to actually meet the challenge? Or what if we looked at, you know, zoning and permitting and licensing, regulations, and how we can reform those to allow for more build, to address this sort of issue. And that is basically a framework that you can take and cross apply to giant issues like climate crisis, or it could be things that aren't as big of issues, right? But that we need to be proportional in our response. And so some people may say, oh, that's too much. But I think the reality is people have gotten used to too little. But then here's the other piece. Somebody can hear that, housing is an infrastructure piece and say, wow, that's very progressive. And I get asked this all the time, are you progressive? Because I talk about that and people think that. Or are you a moderate? And I said, I don't subscribe to either. I subscribe to assent. To me, uh, I think that the left, right, left, center binary, to the extent it was ever informative, which I found it more divisive than anything.
Me
And,
too.
and I found it to be labels that don't look at the full nuance and complexity that we all have as
Of
individuals and
each
as
issue, of each issue.
exactly of each issue, or just as human beings, right? And so that is a construct that's not even as old as the country. So that is a contract that we don't have to stick to. So when I talk about assent, this is not about left versus right. It's about up versus down. This is not about optimism. It's about refusing to die in place. So I believe that every generation gets a moment to decide, are we going to climb or are we going to calcify? And I believe that this is a moment for our generation. And so that is not to say that I'm asking folks to, to believe that everything will get better, but we have to operate as if it can. And
Yes.
again, that is not to say perfection. It's about
What
propulsion.
if Barack Obama would have said, I shouldn't run for president. My name is weird and I'm a black man. I don't have a chance. No other person like me won as president before. What if he would have used that and we wouldn't have had him for 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Yeah,
say just because something hasn't been done before that it can't be done. And you
exactly.
also have to hope. You have to believe.
Mm-hmm.
I
Absolutely.
I struggle with this on a daily basis. I know too much about Indiana and our government. I know too much about our local school system and the school board.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
know a lot about the town and the county and then the state.
Mhm.
And I get overwhelmed and sometimes I feel, why do I do this? And I quickly remember why. First off, I
Yeah.
list hundreds of people in my head that I've met that are also working to save Indiana, and now I get to add you to that list. And
Mhm.
then I think about all the things we're doing. And then I think
Mhm.
about Project Next, why Tim and I started this. And then I'm like, I have to have hope. Every day
Yeah.
I have to find the hope. I have to believe the hope. And I have to
Mhm.
push for change as
Mhm.
much as I can. Am I going to get everything I want? No. Am I going to get some of it? Yes. And
Yep. Yep.
I think the worst thing we can do, as
Mhm.
anybody listening, the worst thing we can do is lose hope and give up and turn on
Mhm.
our TV and play games on our phone and stop engaging in our community and fear those
Uh-huh.
and just go
Mhm.
about our own individual lives and we don't look at the community. That's the worst thing we can do because then we can't make change because the only way we can make change is together, working together. So
I
I really
completely
like
agree.
what you're saying. And I
Well, I
also don't
appreciate
like
that.
labels. I don't like labels at all. I
And,
get why we have them, but I
right.
get really sick of them.
And look, like we could have a label, but let's change the label. Let's have it be up or down. Because the reality is when Republicans are in power, we're always going down, we're going backwards. When Democrats are in power, we're either going up or too often we're stagnant and complacent. And so I would actually take it a step further of we absolutely need to have hope. That's a baseline. But the idea of ascent is not to sell hope, it's about practicing momentum. Right. And so I'm running to prove that clarity and courage and structure collectively can beat despair. And then to your point, thinking about the party building side, and as I referenced earlier, I cannot blame anybody that feels disillusioned in this moment. But it is too easy to kind of bury your head in the sand and say, well, this is what it is. Right. But nobody is coming to change us, to save us. We have to be the change at the end of the day. And so don't step away, step up. And I think that there are a lot of folks that understandably think that the Democratic Party is rigged. And in a sense it is, but it's not by design. The party is designed to be run by those who show up. So folks simply need to show up and understand how to show up and what
You
that looks
can't
like.
you can't say, look, I don't like who is running for this local office when you haven't
Mhm,
gone to a meeting, put yourself on the
mhm,
ballot, found somebody that could be on the ballot, and then
mhm.
maybe you didn't even vote. It's like, well, are
Yeah,
you
yeah.
engaging in the process and making it better, or are you just
Mhm,
complaining? And I understand why people complain. I do too. And
mhm,
I
yeah.
think they feel hurt and unheard. And I just don't think we knew before the
Mhm.
last 10 years. I don't think we knew how to be active in our government. I think we thought it was just voting. And
Yeah.
now we're kind of catching up. Oh, we have to do a lot more than just
Mhm.
vote every 4 years or every 2 years.
Mhm. And no, that's a great point. And the way I think about it is I think a lot of people think this is like DNC Inc., and the chair is like a CEO and whatever he says goes, and every card carrying Democrat across the country has to speak from the same playbook. If only it were that easy. But things are obviously decentralized, and I forget if it was Will Rogers or whatever that quote is of, I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat, something to that effect. But to your point, on the party building side is something I'm particularly passionate about and animated by in this run because, and I'm trying to think of how to structure this. I may take a while to get there. So brevity is not my strong suit, as I mentioned to you earlier. But look, if one party Republican rule is the apparent problem here in Indiana, then we've got to tell the truth that the underlying problem is a lack of Democratic leadership. Because the state party is not the vehicle to bring us back because the Democratic brand is so weak. So then you look at state House and state Senate leadership, and cycle after cycle, they have not been able to materially grow their caucus and make a dent in the Republican supermajorities. Then you look at Congressman Frank Mervan, who is a frontline Democrat in a nationally important seat, constantly in a fight for survival. So he does not have the luxury to think about taking on that party building leadership role. Everything has to be seen through the lens of how does this help me keep my seat? So then you look at some of the bright spots that we have in a lot of the mayors outside of Indianapolis, but none of them have all three of either the interest, ability, and experience to take on that leadership role. So what that means conceptually, regardless of who's in there, is whoever is the mayor of Indianapolis and whoever is the congressperson out of Indianapolis, it is incumbent upon those two positions to not only have a baseline vision for the community and the work ethic to execute upon it, of which I'd argue neither do, but to also take on that party building leadership role. Because back when Democrats were competing and even winning statewide in Indiana, it's in large part because we had an incredible operation out of the city. The county Democratic Party used to have a larger budget than the state Democratic Party.
Wow.
That's no longer the case. Now, under Congressman Carson's tenure, unfortunately, the political infrastructure here is hollowed out. The county party has a fraction of what it used to have from a budget perspective. 36% of our precinct chair and vice chair slots are unfilled. That
Wow.
means that those are neighborhoods that are going untouched. That is power that is being wasted. We are now the worst performing congressional district in the state in voter turnout, in a state that is already near the bottom in the whole country in voter turnout. So while in Indy we are fine as a blue city and having our Democratic elected officials, the lack of a strong operation here has detrimental effects for Democrats across the state.
I see a lot. I'm just now learning about Indy, like city council and the mayor in Indy. I'm just now learning about things. I had Jesse Brown on the show. He would be my
Mhm,
favorite city council member in Indy. He is trying to do some progressive things and to actually try to help people stay housed, try to just change a few things to help. And the Democrats on the city council tried to take away his committees just for him
mhm,
trying to do a few things. And that's when I found out, oh, the Democrats elected in the Indy City Council are very scared of the Republicans at the state house and the state Senate, and they're not standing up for us. They're not
mhm,
representing us. And then not only are they not being brave and doing morally what they should to protect
mhm,
Indianapolis people, but they're also trying to take down the person that is. And then there was
mhm,
somebody else that was a former council member that I heard on another podcast talking, and the same thing happened to him.
mhm,
And I'm like, oh, we, the people, need to call that out. That's why I had him on my
mhm.
show on Get the Word Out.
Yeah,
And I was like, what
yeah,
happened? I was like, well, let's see if they
right.
get a little better. I'll call them out for doing good things. Maybe they could add you to some committees, Jesse Brown, instead of trying to take you away, since you're actually doing a good job. And that's a shock for many
Mhm,
Indiana Democrats to hear. It was shocking for me. I live at the bottom of Indiana, and I
mhm,
just blindly assumed that those Democrats in office in the cities were doing the good work for the people, but
mhm,
that's not always the case. And I appreciate that you're
mhm,
willing to call that out. I think every good moral person that wants to make their communities better should also
mhm,
call it out. And I'm
mhm.
tired of the silence, personally. I'm tired
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
silence.
No, no, you make an incredible point, and I told Jesse this recently, and I've been outspoken about this. I think has an important voice in the ecosystem. He and I, as we've discussed, may not always agree on various things, but to your earlier point, there's so much more that unites us than
The
divides
Venn
us.
diagram of the two of you is
Right.
very big in the middle there.
And also, like, we move differently, right? We both challenge power but may challenge it in different ways. But what I've said, and with respect for a lot of the city councilors that I know and consider friends, is it was wrong to remove him from the caucus, point blank. From a few different perspectives. One, you're hurting his constituents more than anything else. These are folks that voted for him for a reason.
He did
you
very
know
well in his election.
yeah,
People are
yeah.
very happy to have elected Jesse Brown, who wants to represent them. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. Two, it's actually counterproductive to what leadership in the caucus wanted, because they actually gave him a bigger megaphone. And I
So
think
true.
it's not what they wanted to do. And then three, look, you don't have to agree with people. You cannot like how he operates, how he moves, how he challenges power, you know, and things of that nature. But beat him. If you have a problem with it, then put up a primary challenger and beat him. Like, let the voters decide.
Don't
And I
you
think
take away his power. We wanted him.
it,
Those people
it,
elected him so he has power. Don't try to take that power away.
exactly. And this is something that I spoke about recently, because I represent the Indiana Latino Democratic Caucus on the state central committee of the Indiana Democratic Party. So that's the governing board. And I was at our state party reorganization a couple of weeks back, where we elect a chair, vice chair, treasurer, etc. And once the meeting ended, this party elder came up to me and she goes, "Are you going to run against Andre Carson?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just exploring right now." And she looked to the person I was in conversation with and said, "Yep, that means he's going to do it." So then she looks me dead in the eye and she goes, "You're going to get hurt." And I smiled and I told her I'm not worried. So I came back home, and I think what was probably my third or fourth TikTok of posting, I told that story, but I didn't tell it to complain or about this specific incident, but I used it to make a larger point about why was that the initial response, a warning, a threat, whatever you want to call it, as opposed to asking, what is my vision? What do I want to do for the
Maybe you're
district?
better. Let's find out about
Mhm.
you, and then let's
Exactly.
have a healthy race in the primary, and
Exactly.
let's vote for who we think's better. That
Exactly.
that is a
There's no
very
reason.
good example of what is wrong with a lot of people in
Mhm.
power. And it's not just Democrat Central Committee, it's Republican Central Committee, it's political parties, people in power and across the whole country.
Mhm.
being scared of change, of
Mhm.
somebody else wanting better,
Mhm.
and letting the people decide who's better. It seems like it's a fight for control. They want to tell you who to vote for. And it's like, no, we the people tell you who we want and we elect them. And I'm getting sick of that disrespect on
Exactly.
their end. They need to listen to us.
Exactly.
I just am going to say I'm not
And
pleased with the
and
Central Committee
100%.
electing who they elected as chair, but at the same time, I'm going to still work with them and try to help them and do everything I can. But it shows the
Mhm.
problem. Very few people elected
Mhm.
chair, and
Mhm.
underhanded things were at play.
Mhm.
And we're just hurting ourselves, and it's just people wanting power.
Mhm.
They want to stay in control, and I'm over it. My daughter doesn't have health care rights in Indiana, and our public schools are
Mhm.
being dismantled. I don't
Mhm.
care whether you have your position in power or not. There are things that are bigger than you, and I
It
just am getting frustrated with them.
100%. It's almost just like we're trying to rule over ashes, right? And what is the purpose of power if it is not serving people? And why are we, protecting ideas like incumbent concepts like incumbency and seniority instead of letting the best ideas, the best messengers, the best candidates, the best policies rise? And I think that's something that we need to get past. And look, we saw the detrimental effects of this happening at the highest level, with President Biden and folks just not wanting to tell the truth. And so
Right.
this is a time to be emboldened, and to just tell the truth. So my run is about telling the truth. I have nothing personal against Congressman Carson. I respect Congressman Carson. Up until this, I had a good relationship with Congressman Carson. But again, we need to tell the truth. And the fact of the
If Andre Carson is doing a great job, he should welcome you. In my opinion, since I also am running, I'm going to run for state house again. In my opinion, he should call you up and say, "Thank you for running. Let's do this. Let's have healthy debates. Let's have public conversations. Let's get out there so that the voters get to pick who they think is better, since we are elected to represent them." And I don't understand why people aren't doing this. I'm saying right now in District 70, I want
Mhm.
primaries. Please. I'd love 10 people to primary me. Tim Peck for Congress, primary Tim Peck. He's ready. And if they vote for somebody different than me, that's fine. I don't have the ego to be like, oh, I'm just vote for who you think is going to represent
Mhm.
District 70 at the State House. Vote for that person.
I mean,
I don't get the hostileness you're getting. It is making me upset as a Hoosier, as a Democrat, as a
mhm,
voter. I want
mhm,
primaries. Competition's
mhm.
good.
Yeah. No, no. I mean, primary sharpen the party, right? And we have to live out the values and the things that we say. The GOP is constantly overturning its bench, yet we're working with the same roster that we've had for quite some time. And the other piece is, it's just sure from certain pockets, I'm getting levels of hostility, but by and large, that is not at all the case. There is kind of a tension point that I'm seeing of, in one sense, this is a David and versus Goliath fight, but we also know how that ended. But in another sense, I feel this air of inevitability, and it's not that I'm inevitable; it is that change is inevitable. It is
Yes.
already happening. In by virtue of taking on this race, I am a vessel for it, in this moment. But Congressman Carson represents inertia. I'm representing urgency. So it goes back to this, to the idea before. This is not left versus center. This is not young versus old. He's obviously not even old, right? This is about vision. This is about urgency. This is about results at the end of the day.
I
And
get
and
the sense that you are out there talking to the people. I am
yeah.
also out there talking to the
Mhm.
people. And we, as Hoosiers in Indiana, are
Mhm.
collectively worried and concerned about our government. And we
Mhm.
want change, and we
Yeah.
want different, and we want more people at the table, not
Mhm.
less. And the
Mhm.
fact that these people that have the power are clinging so
Yeah.
dearly to their power
Yeah.
and not pulling other people up with them
Mhm.
is pissing me the crap off, honestly. And I'm going to keep using my network to try to promote them to stop doing that, because I'm going to
Yeah.
shine a light on their fear of change.
Yeah.
Things are changing. Are you not watching the news? Things are
Mhm.
changing. Your lack of
Yeah.
honesty, your lack of
Mhm.
saying we need to fix these systems that are being
Mhm.
broken and dismantled and weren't working great in the first place. We need to change them. Their lack
Absolutely.
of honesty is really hurting the Democratic Party. And it's why our favorability, I think it's one of the reasons our favorability is so low right now. If you look
Mhm.
at polls
Mhm.
nationally of how Democrats are polling, it's low.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
lack of honesty, the lack of, the fear of change is really
Absolutely.
hurting us.
No, absolutely. And it's been honestly surprising to me. I am months ahead of schedule for where I anticipated being from like in organizing and ground game side of things. The way I always thought about it is I think it's probably a couple hundred stakeholders whose, and I don't say this in a disparaging way, but whose political lives are their social lives, because there is a social aspect to this
Oh,
where
yeah.
you're going, hey, I'm going to this township meeting, this week, and then we're going to this insert, elected official fundraiser the next week, and you see a lot of the same folks. And these are people that I know, that I've worked with, that I appreciate, that I like.
Same. Yep.
But there's it's a lot of thinking about representing community when really they represent each other. So that's a body of people that I figured this period of time right now is the arc of doubt and dismissal. But they'll see the launch video and the strong launch and the national press attention. They'll see strong quarterly fundraising numbers. They'll see the more additional momentum I'm building, and over time you'll see people not necessarily defect from Congressman Carson, but they'll start hedging and sitting on their hands and maybe not going to work, making quiet outreaches, this and that. But that body of that universe of voter is not something that is the central path to victory. And it's a small group at the end of the day. Even if you say they each bring 10 voters with them, you're talking about 2,000 voters that won't universally be with the congressman. But when the floor in a Democratic midterm primary like this is 42,000 votes, and you're probably looking at a competitive primary being 48 to 50,000 votes, a win number between a 21 and 25,000 or so, it's about finding those other folks that do their civic duty, but they're involved in public life in a variety of other ways, in business community, in labor, in faith communities, in philanthropy, and nonprofits, etc. And as I meet with folks across the district, there is that a lack of allegiance to this machine that actually is not that strong. So
Right.
this
I
is
so agree with you.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the emperor has no clothes.
Yes.
Power is an illusion, and people have power because we give it to them,
And
right?
and the Central State Committee, they're not as powerful as they think they are, and they're so stuck in their little systems and their little events that they go to, and they kind of say, well, this person didn't come to our event that one time, so we don't like them. Instead of saying, what does this person represent? What does this person represent to the people of Indiana? Because in reality, Indiana Hoosiers are concerned and worried and want change. And I really feel like it's a class thing too. I feel like the people that are in the central committee are a different class of people. It helps me understand them because sometimes I have anger towards them and I don't want to. I want to have peace and love for them. And so
I
if I
agree.
look at it as a class thing, I see their fear of a class they don't understand. They're called, the elite Dems term that we get put on.
Okay.
Some of that is real. Some of that people call us that and call us elite Democrats for a reason, and I see it. And it doesn't mean they're not good people and that they don't want good things for the state, but they're not seeing all of Hoosiers, all of Indiana. When all of Indiana is saying, we want this person, and they choose the safe person instead, we feel unheard, and they're scared. They're scared of change. And
100%.
I'm trying to understand their side right now so that I'm not just angry, but I do think class has a part of it. And just in that bubble, they're in those events. You and I are probably going to see each other at those events
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
future where you put on your fancy outfit and you have fancy food that's decorated in a different way instead of just eating your food. Like, I feel uncomfortable and I have to put on a little bit of, oh yeah, I do this every day, eat this fancy food. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I feel like they need to step more into our comfort zone and turn on
Mhm.
their ears and close their
Mhm.
mouths and learn from
Mhm.
us more.
Yeah, I mean, look, power protects power, and we seem to have forgotten at large that politics is about people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, local local actions shape national impacts. So when we talk about things being top down, it's not just top down nationally. like it being top down at the state level, it being top down at a city level. We need to think bottom up. We
Yep.
need to think about how are we building movement. So look, the deeper I get into this process, this is what I've done professionally as a Democratic political operative. So I'm under, if I were to lose, sure, I can't be surprised I'm going against a longtime incumbent who is a legacy, right? But the deeper I get into this process and see that this community, that Indianapolis is screaming for change, they've just been waiting for it and haven't been given that opportunity, I'm fully convinced that I'm going to win. But regardless of outcome, what I am trying to do with this is build bottom up, actually be on the ground, because I want what is built via this race to be a vehicle to help the party here locally, which then helps the party in the state. So that folks that come through the volunteer funnel and help out in a variety of ways, that they're learning how to organize online, that they're learning how to organize, in real life, that they are learning how to do peer-to-peer grassroots fundraising, because these are the people that will be volunteers for other candidates. These are the people that may run for party leadership at any given level.
And
These are
we
the
need
people
those
that,
people. We need
right?
new people in these leadership roles. And like somebody volunteering for your campaign is the start of that. You're going to help
Exactly.
teach them. You're going to help give them a seat at the table. So then we
Mm-hmm.
have more diverse people so we can
Mm-hmm.
save our state and the country. So what you
Exactly.
are
And
saying
they might be
makes
candidates
me
too.
excited. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to fuel a lot of people. And you're saying your campaign's doing better than you thought for just exploring. Like you literally announced today, this morning, you are running for Congress.
Yeah.
Before it was a exploratory. And so I'm very
Mm-hmm.
excited for you. I'm very glad you are running. I'm super excited about this primary. You are welcome on my show whenever you'd like to come on and talk about what you're doing. I am on board. You are a people person. My neighborhood, I don't live in Indianapolis. I live in Palmyra. It's about 900 people in my town. We have a food pantry that a church built. It's 2 blocks from my house. I put food
Mm-hmm.
in it. 10 minutes later, it's gone. We have
Yeah.
another food pantry at the old firehouse. Soon as
Mm-hmm.
people put food in there, it's gone. I'll put shoes
Yeah.
in there. They're gone. I'll put anything I think might benefit them. It's gone. Every day I see
Yeah.
my community hurting from poverty. You think I'm
Yeah.
going to forget that
Yeah.
and eat the fancy food and be with the
Mm-hmm.
elite people? No, never. I will always fight for them. And I don't care whether they didn't vote for me for State House. I don't care. I
Mm-hmm.
love them. I don't want them
Mm-hmm.
hungry. I don't want their children
Yeah.
suffering. I want our public school, Morgan, to stay open and stay public.
Mm-hmm.
And it we need more people realizing what's happening. And what you're saying is, let's let regular people that are upset with the way things are going be included in your campaign. Let's
We,
give
we,
them a
we,
seat.
we need to care about people more than we do power. We
Oh,
need to
yes.
care more about, impact and what we're doing than who we are, what we're trying to be, so this is mission driven for me. This is not about me. This is not about Congressman Carson, quite frankly. This is not about this race. This is not about this cycle. This is about building something bigger than all of us. And so that's what I'm hoping, and planning and building out the structure and scaffolding and working hard day in and day out to do, because
How
there is
can
a rebuild democratic power.
we can do this? I
Mhm.
am very hopeful. I just had a live, you all, with mad voters and 2 district chairs discuss how to get regular people involved in the democratic process, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. Go to your
Mhm.
local party, your county, get
Mhm.
involved, become a precinct chair, maybe run for something local that's small, and
Mhm.
then learn stuff, and then run for something bigger.
Mhm.
And so catch that. It's the episode that was just aired before this, and
Yeah.
I'm just so excited because this is what we need to do.
Mhm.
Have hope, everybody. So many people didn't vote in Indiana in this past
Mhm.
election in November, especially Democrats. They did not turn out because they
Mhm.
didn't feel like they were being heard. I
Mhm.
really want to change that for May next year, 2026. I would be really excited if I were in Indiana to get to vote for you, to vote for who I thought would be best. And if Andre Carson wants to come on the show and I can hear his viewpoint, I will give him a platform if he wants to. Competition is good. Let's get as
Mhm.
many people on the primary as possible. Let's Let's
Hmm.
give Democrats a reason to want to vote, because we haven't been doing that in Indiana in the last few years. How can
Absolutely.
we help you? Let's say that somebody is listening in another state, or let's say
Hmm.
that somebody is listening in Indy. How
Hmm.
can both of these people, how could they help your campaign?
No, I really appreciate that. I would direct everybody to go to my campaign website, which is georgehornedo.com. And just to spell it out, George. And then Hornedo is HORNEDO.com. And we can drop it in a comment. But on that, you can view my launch video. You can view kind of the structure of the policy platform that I'm going to be rolling out in kind of a structured cadence. So would love to come back on at other points during the cycle to talk about
Definitely.
each.
You are very welcome on. And then,
Okay.
like, I know I went to your website. You can
Mhm.
put your information in.
Yeah.
And if you're
You.
listening and you're
Mhm.
new to helping someone,
Mhm.
you can help as little or as much as you want. So don't feel
Yep.
like, "Oh, I'm a busy person. I have
Mhm.
a job. I'm doing this." You
Mhm.
can you can help a little bit, or you can help a lot, right? You're going to
Mhm.
accept all of the help.
Yeah, whether you're in district, whether you're out of district, out of state, it doesn't matter. We've got ways for you to plug in. So there's a volunteer, button, all across the website that if you click will take you to this Google form, and it'll put you through the funnel, and then you'll hear from my team, and then also, a donate button, because obviously, campaigns like this run on resources, and this is a grassroots campaign at the end of the day, as we try and scale up. And so, no, deeply appreciative to anybody that may have interest. And I want this campaign to be centered on people at the end of the day. I want this to be two-way engagement. I'm accessible. You want to reach out to me? My email is george@georgehornedo.com. I will respond. Reach
I
out to me.
reached out to
Um,
you and I heard back very quickly, and we did not know each other. And
yep, yep, yep.
and I've heard you, and I've been following your social media because I wanted to know more about you before you came on the show, and you actively engage. And if somebody is close by, you say, "Hey, do you want to meet for coffee and we can discuss this issue?"
Mhm.
You are not afraid to tackle any issue and to talk openly. You are for the people, and that is something we have been missing and we have been craving, and I think that's why your campaign is taking off. I think that's why people like Jesse Brown or AOC
Mhm.
or Bernie Sanders. I think that's why
Mhm.
these people have giant followings, because we see their honesty, we see they're
Mhm.
for the people, we see they don't
Mhm.
care about power as much as they
Mhm.
care about people that are hungry, people that
Yep.
need their basic needs met. They need to stay in their house. And
Yep.
that's what fuels me. I don't care about power. I just want my neighbors to have food and to be able to stay in their homes,
Yeah,
And
the basic necessities, right?
yeah, basic
Like,
necessities. And
it's
and
gonna be the
when
bar.
Democrats start getting on board and listening to the people, our brand will go up. But
Absolutely.
we still have some work to do. And you running in this race is the work we need to do. So I cannot thank you enough for running. Thank you for primarying a person that has been in Congress a long time, and for putting pressure on our elected officials to be better. This is how we save our state and our government. So I, I know how much work it is to run for Congress, just because one of my best friends is Tim Peck, and it is a lot. And so I'm just letting you know I'll be a friend and I will be your supporter. If you are mentally struggling, you can call me. I will give you my cell number and I will pump you up, because you are in for a ride. And my
I
hope,
sure am.
my hope is that the Democratic Party gets on board quicker and realizes competition is good, and
Yep.
having a bunch of people on the primary is good for us.
I mean, I don't know if you saw when I was, taking the little chug of a Celsius here, but it was just so hard to get any sleep last night. It was all the emotions, all the feelings, and still is the case today, right?
Because
Like
you were about to unleash
excitement,
this campaign, right?
right? And so it's to be on this side of it. It's, oh man, I'm gonna feel a little emotional, but it's just truly like it's bigger than me. It's
It's bigger
humbling,
than you.
right? It's uh, I'm determined. I'm
I feel
determined,
it. I
and
feel your drive. I feel your passion. You're very educated and moral and brave. You're the things that I like the best in the best politicians. So I am so
appreciate
excited for you. I'm so glad we talked for this hour.
it. I know this is a
Count
lot of
me
fun.
in as you're for the people. I'm for the people. We don't need the labels. We're for human
Mhm.
beings, and we want human beings to have a respectful and happy life, and it doesn't
Mhm.
always have to be as hard as it is right now for many of us.
Mhm.
And you see
Yeah.
that, and you're driven to make positive change for us. And that means a lot to me. So thank
Thank you. No,
you.
means the world. We all eat when we all eat, and look, there is no one cookie cutter, one size fits all for what a life of dignity and success looks like. But I think that government should do the work, whatever it takes, to help make that a reality for everybody.
Right.
So,
And I think being open and honest, moral and brave, these are things we need more of our politicians to step up and do. And if
mhm,
they are unable to do that, then they need to get out of the way and let other people come in, because our lives are at
mhm,
stake. People are being unhoused, people are
mhm,
hungry, children's schools are being defunded. I mean, major things are happening. And
yeah.
if you are not going to get on board with the people, move out of the way. Um, let's do
I
this.
can't say
And
that. I can't say it better than that. You did it.
one of my favorite things of running for state house was I met so many incredible people across the state instead of just my little area. And now
Mhm.
I get to add you to that.
I
And
love it.
you make sure you find your people. Every day you're gonna meet more of them.
Mhm,
My advice for you is to, when you are down or when you are struggling,
mhm,
call the person that you know is going to give you the best comfort
mhm.
for that
Yeah,
situation, and get comfort from them, because you
yeah,
are going to be embarking in something that is very difficult, and we are cheering you on, and we will, when you want to fall down, we will pick you up, we will hold you and keep you, because
appreciate that.
you are in for a ride. And let's
Sure.
support George, you guys. Let's support him in this mission. I know a lot of you are, but let's grow that. So he's on Facebook, he's on Instagram, he's on TikTok, he's on YouTube. Share this
Substack,
episode.
Threads, Blue Sky.
There you
It's at
go.
George Hornedo on every single platform. So find
Yes.
me and let's engage. It'll be fun.
And I think George Hornedo to spell it, but it's George Hornado to say it. So
Yep.
just remember the
Yep.
E. The A is
Yep.
an E, and then you got how to spell his
Mhm.
name, because I've been writing it a lot lately. Yeah, I'm so excited for you. Let's have you
No,
back on the
thank you.
show whenever you want, and good
Oh,
luck.
that'd be fun.
And let's support let's support George, you guys, and get the word out about him, and let's do primaries, right?
Awesome.
Let's get
Let's
excited
build a
about
better
voting next May.
let's build a better Democratic Party. Well, thank you
Let's
again,
do it.
Sarah, and thank you everybody for jumping on, and georgetornado.com. I'll see y'all there.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Please share it if you can, and subscribe to our YouTube. Project Next Movement, one word, please subscribe. All right. Bye, you all. Thank
Take
you.